Howdy, howdy. Today I want to talk about a concept that is both revered and unfortunately misunderstood: enlightenment. Many view enlightenment as an elusive goal, a spiritual achievement reserved for saints, mystics, or some monks on distant mountaintops. But I want to share a different perspective. Enlightenment is not a distant ideal or an unreachable state. In fact, enlightenment is a choice. Enlightenment is a choice that we can make every single day, every hour, and in fact, in every situation we face. Now, before we dive into the deeper principles of enlightenment, let me clarify one thing. The term enlightenment is often poorly defined, misused, and in some cases even over glorified. Different spiritual traditions, teachers, and philosophies use the word differently, and therefore it can sometimes feel ambiguous and even misleading. However, because the term is so widely recognized, I will use it today, but with the intention of adding depth and clarity through the lens of Vedic philosophical principles and teachings. So, enlightenment, in my view, of course, is not some ill defined spiritual achievement. Rather, enlightenment is a habit. It is a state of being that we must choose continuously and deliberately. The famous philosopher, right, Aristotle said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act but a habit. I would amend that statement to say, we are what we repeatedly do. Hence, enlightenment is not an act or an achievement, but a habit, a way of existence. So, enlightenment is not a one time experience or a sudden realization, though it does not mean that we cannot have sudden spiritual realizations. I'm not denying those realities as well. I'm just expanding our understanding of enlightenment. When enlightenment becomes a habit, it permeates every aspect of our lives, allowing us to experience profound benefits at every moment and every time we choose enlightened living. So, what does enlightenment truly entail? At its core, enlightenment rests on three fundamental pillars: self realization, self mastery, and self actualization. These are not abstract concepts, they are practical, actionable, and attainable through conscious choice, deliberate choice. So let's start with self realization, this first pillar. This is understanding our true nature. In the words of Vedic teachings, there's a Sanskrit term called Atmanam Vidhi, know thyself. Atmagyan, self realization. Self realization is the knowledge and understanding of our material being, for sure, our material nature, our material reality. physical and emotional and intellectual. Absolutely. And also the understanding of our true spiritual identity. It is the realization that we are not merely physical beings bound by material circumstances, but we are eternal souls connected qualitatively with the Supreme. The philosopher Chardin had an incredible and poignant philosophical statement. He had said, "We are not physical, material beings, or rather human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience." A very, very poignant statement if we give it due thought. Self-realization, it involves a deep recognition of our true spiritual identity that is not tied or that is beyond to our physical body and subtle mind and ego. Right? In chapter 2, text 20 of the Bhagavad Gita, right? Krishna says, Nijayate mriyate vakadhachin nayam bhutva bhavitavana bhuya ajo nitya shashvatoyam parano nahanyate hanyamane shariro. For the soul, there's neither birth nor death at any time. It has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. It is unborn, eternal, ever existing and primeval. It is not slain when the body is slain. This is our spiritual nature, our spiritual being. When we come to this realization, we transcend the limits of the material world and begin to experience life from a perspective of our spiritual identity. With this is self-realization. It does not negate our material reality. Rather, it encompasses every aspect of our total material and spiritual being, our material reality and our spiritual identity. All of that entire full realization is Atmagyan, realization of the self. The second pillar, self-mastery, controlling our impulses and desires. The second pillar of enlightenment, self-mastery, means precisely what it says. Mastery of self. Once we have realized, let's put this into perspective in relation to the first pillar. Once we have realized our true nature, our material reality, and our spiritual identity, once we have realized this, we gain the ability to master our physical, emotional, and mental impulses. This is the process of gaining control over ourselves rather than being controlled by our desires, our fears, our impulses. No, we are able to gain mastery of them. This requires an awareness. This requires a realization of the self. But with that realization comes then the knowledge that we can begin to master them. To achieve self-mastery, we cultivate discipline and, of course, awareness. A practical example, let's bring this to the meat and potatoes of the issue. Forgive the visual that brought for those of us who are vegetarians and vegans, but you get my point. A practical example is in how we react to emotional triggers, right? In a moment of anger, for instance, a person without self-mastery may lash out, say hurtful things and cause harm to their relationships. But a person who has achieved self-mastery is able to pause, reflect, and respond with patience and compassion. So in this way, self-mastery not only brings inner peace, but also fosters harmony in our interactions with others. It puts us in a space where we're able to respond, right? Responsible. This is for those of us who are students, as I consider myself, of Viktor Frankl. There's a gap between stimulus and response. And responsibility is having the self-realization, the self-mastery to choose our response to the stimuli around us. So now let's go to the third pillar of enlightenment. This is self-actualization. First was self-realization, then self-mastery. Now we come to self-actualization. Once we have realized our true, complete nature, that is our material reality and our spiritual identity, and have mastered our impulses, we can then live and manifest at our highest potential, both spiritually and materially. Self-actualization means we not only understand our spiritual identity, but we can also express it and manifest it fully in this world and in our relationships. It is a realization of our highest purpose and the manifestation of our greatest gifts. Remember the psychologist Abraham Maslow in his hierarchy of needs? He describes self-actualization as a process of becoming the best version of ourselves. In his words, and I quote, "What a man can be, he must be." Very powerful little phrase, a statement. When we reach this stage, we live in alignment with our highest values. We live in alignment with our spiritual identity. We live in alignment with the reality and the limitations of our material being and situation. But yet we are still contributing to the world in meaningful ways. We are not limited by fear, doubt, or insecurity. Rather, we rise to our full potential, embracing both our spiritual and material capacities. So all three aspects of enlightenment, self-realization, self-mastery, and self-actualization, are not bestowed upon us. That's the wrong way to look at this. They are the results of conscious choice. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna delivers all kinds of spiritual knowledge, which culminates in bhakti yoga. But at the end of it, he tells Arjuna, you choose. Krishna did not dictate to Arjuna anything. At the end of that long, drawn-out conversation, Krishna says, I have said what I needed to say. Now you choose to do what you want to do. Enlightenment is a choice. We have to choose to live in alignment with our spiritual nature, to practice self-mastery, and to express at our highest potential, both our spiritual and material potential. Every day we are presented with opportunities to make these choices, whether it's in how we respond to a difficult situation, how we treat others, or how we manage our own thoughts and emotions, etc. We are presented with this choice every day, throughout the entire day, all day long. One of the most beautiful outcomes of enlightenment is the transformation of our relationship with the Supreme, right? Enlightenment brings us into a state of even more choice because enlightenment is freedom. That's essentially what enlightenment is. Freedom. We are not driven by triggers. We have self mastery. We are self actualized. We're living at our highest potential. This brings us greater freedom. So, enlightenment, the result of enlightenment is freedom, or even more freedom. And in that state of freedomness, one would say, there is even more or greater capacity for choice. That's what freedom gives. Freedom gives choice. And this space is where we can then choose love. We can then choose love for the Supreme, love for God, if we're going to talk in those terms. So we can choose love for God rather than fear of God. And fear of God is rampant throughout society. That's another video for another time. So we can choose love and we can recognize love for God, love for the Supreme, rather than have this fear. When the enlightened choose love, it's called bhakti. That's what bhakti is. Bhakti is when an enlightened person makes the choice of love. That's bhakti. Bhakti does not exist in the being of a person who has not even chosen or who has yet to choose enlightenment. Now, I want to make this very clear. Bhakti is a seed within each and every one of us. We each have the capacity for bhakti, absolutely. It is inherent within us, just like any child is born with the inherent ability to walk upright. It may not be able to, or it cannot do so when it's first born, but it has the inherent capacity to do so. Similarly, we all have the seed, Bhakti Lata Bij, it is actually called, the seed of the creeper of love. It is within us. The Bhakti Shastras describe that Bhakti Devi herself, the goddess of Bhakti, exists within our heart. So the capacity to choose, to manifest, and to live in pure bhakti is within us as a seed. But we have to choose enlightenment and therefore choose bhakti. When we live in a state of enlightenment, the choice of love, of bhakti, of Radha Krishna becomes a manifest reality and permeates all of our relationships. Bhakti connects us with Radha Krishna, Radha being the supreme feminine, Krishna being the supreme masculine. Together, the energies from the feminine all the way to the masculine and everything in between. All of this energy together personified in Radha Krishna. And this bhakti permeates everything in all of our relationships. All our relationships become infused and are indeed founded upon bhakti. In this state of bhakti, every moment of life is infused with divine love. We see the presence of God in all beings, in all situations, and we experience the deep joy and fulfillment that comes from living in love and with harmony with Radha and Krishna. This love, this bhakti, permeates every aspect of our lives. It transforms our relationships, our work, and even our challenges into opportunities for spiritual growth. Even our challenges, our problems become opportunities. This is what bhakti does. We do not see challenges as problems. We see them as opportunities for the manifestation, for the experience of bhakti, of love. This is what the enlightened is able to do. The enlightened is able to transform situations into opportunities for the experience of bhakti. So in conclusion, to sum up, enlightenment is not some distant goal or an abstract ideal that is undefined. It is a choice, a clear choice we can make every day. By choosing self-realization, we come to know and experience and manifest our true nature. By choosing self-mastery, we gain control over our impulses and desires. And by choosing self-actualization, we manifest at our highest material and spiritual potential. Enlightenment is not a destination. It is a journey. It is a lifestyle. It is a journey that leads us to a life of deep fulfillment, joy, and bhakti. So, as we cultivate the habit of enlightenment, we transform every moment into an opportunity. And that's the key. Every moment becomes an opportunity for growth, for peace, for love, for connection with each other, with ourselves, and with the Supreme One, with Radha Krishna. Every opportunity becomes, or every moment becomes, that opportunity. So make the choice for enlightenment. Choose to live in alignment with your spiritual identity. Choose to embrace the love, bhakti of Radha and Krishna. And I guarantee you, you make this choice, you will experience freedom, joy, meaning, and fulfillment. I guarantee it. Hari Hari.